Heyo friends, it's Matt with Bowls, and right off the bat, I want to thank you all for watching. I don't say this often enough, but I think given my potential to sometimes ramble on, I'll keep this brief. See, I'm trying to learn how to be more concise, and I think that's helping me grow. I know some out there will say I'm just trying to provoke some sort of reaction from the audience, hoping they will consume more of the media I put out there in the hopes of getting some phantasmal reward. But that could not be further from the truth. In fact, the only thing I would ask from anyone watching is to just have some patience as we go over today's game, Ukotoa. Ukotoa is a semi-cooperative tactical game with a map reduction mechanic, and it's based on the popular Dungeons & Dragons web series, Critical Role. Each player controls 2 colors of sailors, with the goal to have those sailors be the only ones remaining as Ukotoa, a giant sea beast, rips your ship asunder. The colors of sailor a player controls are determined by the faction tokens placed between them. This means the players to your left and to your right are both your allies, since you share a color between each of you. But each of those players to either side of you are themselves not allies, since they are not adjacent to each other, and therefore do not share a color. If you've never played a semi-cooperative game like this, the setup can be a little confusing at first, but it ends up being delightfully fun trying to pit your enemies against your allies in order to strengthen your own bond with said ally. Again, a little confusing at first. Each game of Ukotoa begins with creating your wrecked ship. The ship's wheel token is placed in the center of the play area, then players in turn each place a hex token so that the arrow on that token is pointing towards the previously placed tile. Once the final ship hex tile is placed, the Ukotoa miniature is placed on that hex. There's not really any restrictions on how this setup phase plays out, but the more complicated you make this ship setup to start, the more difficult the game will be for newer players. So they recommend just a simple outward spiral for your first couple games so you can get the hang of it before moving on to more complicated setups. Next, each player picks a color of sailor tokens, and in turn, players place one of their sailor tokens on any unoccupied hex. Notably, this is not necessarily the color that the player will be controlling during the game, so don't go ahead and try to fix it ahead of time to give yourself the best possible starting setup, because you might end up just helping your opponent instead. Because once that's done, the faction tokens are then placed randomly between each player, and this is what determines the player's controlled sailors. Which tokens are to their left and to their right determine which sailors that player controls. Once all that's done, players draw 2 action cards and the game begins. Players take turns in simple clockwise order. Each turn is broken down into 4 steps. First, an optional advancement phase, next, a draw phase, then an action phase, and finally, the discard phase. During the optional advancement phase, the active player may choose to move Ukotoa 1 hex forward. For this movement, and any other time Ukotoa moves, that player moves the Ukotoa miniature following the arrow of the hex it's currently on. Any sailor on that hex are removed from the game and probably go get a cool sword or something. Then, the hex Ukotoa just left is removed from the game, thus reducing the available spaces sailors have to flee to. Next, the drawing phase, and the active player draws 2 cards. Nice and simple. The action phase is where the bulk of the game happens, and it's where players will be playing the cards from their hand to do various things. However, players have 3 options on how they will play these cards. If a player plays a single card, they do whatever the card says, and then their action phase ends. Simple. If a player plays 2 exact duplicate cards, they perform that action once, but they get to continue their action phase, potentially playing more cards. And finally, if a player discards 2 duplicates, or any 3 cards, they draw a new card and continue their action phase as before, potentially playing more cards. This mechanic means a carefully constructed hand can allow for an absolute blowout of a turn with up to 4 actions if done just right. There are 5 types of action cards in Ukotoa. The Advanced Ukotoa card comes in 3 different strengths, 1, 2, and 3, and each move Ukotoa that many spaces forward, and no less. The Unleash a Tentacle card also comes in strengths 1 through 3, and removes any sailors in a straight line from the Ukotoa miniature. The Run card allows a player to move any sailor they control up to 3 spaces. Sailors cannot move through occupied hexes using the Run card. However, the Push card not only allows a sailor to move up to 2 spaces, but that sailor can move into an occupied hex, provided the sailor in that hex can be moved into a neighboring hex. Finally, the Take Them Instead card allows a player to swap positions of any sailor they control with the position of any sailor that they do not control. With any of these action cards that move sailors, sailors can move and run anywhere on the ship. But remember, the ship is continuously getting torn apart as Ukotoa rampages through it, and by the end of the game, there's literally no ship remaining. So anything you can do to delay the inevitable for your own sailors is an effort worth taking early. Once the player's action phase is done, they move on to discard phase and discard down to 5 cards. Again, pretty simple. Then the next player's turn begins, and the game continues until one of 2 conditions are met. Either there's only 1 color of sailor remaining on the ship, in which case the 2 players controlling that color enjoy a shared victory. Otherwise, if there are 2 colors of sailor remaining and 1 player controls both of those colors, that player becomes the sole winner of the game. Ukotoa is a great combination of strategic and hectic. The whole layout of the board and the sailors can change so much between each of your turns. This game pretty much embodies the proverb of the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. With such a simple to understand gameplay structure, but a great theme laying on top of it, Ukotoa is a surefire hit not just for fans of Critical Role, but for any tabletop gamer. So if all of that sounds interesting, please go check out Ukotoa, and if you enjoyed this video, please click that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more tabletop gaming news. Again, I'm Matt with Bowls. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Click to subscribe. Check out more videos. And thanks for watching.